Myself, I'm Surya Narayana and have total 8 years of experience in the IT field, and in which I have almost close to 7 years of experience on DevOps and various methodologies I have been worked. And let's go to the topic. So let's first of all let's discuss about the agenda today. So today's agenda is about discussing about SDLC, software development lifecycle, and various methodologies that organizations are still following. And that is one about waterfall method, the other one is agile methodologies, and what's the major differences between these two types of methods what we have. And then we'll go with DevOps topics and the concept called CI and CD. And finally, what are the different tools that we are going to use and what are all the tools that we are going to cover in these sessions. So everything I'm going to give you an overview in detail. So let's go into this topic. So first of all, let's discuss what is meant by SDLC. So SDLC is nothing but a software development lifecycle. So every organizations, so for example, I'm one of the client. Okay, let us consider I'm the client. So if I want to develop some application, I'm looking for some application. That means I have some idea. Okay, I want to develop something, some Paytm application, something like that. So I want to develop that application. I have an idea, but I need some developers who can develop my, I mean, who can make my idea come true. So I'll go and approach one company, software company, and I will provide all my requirements. So first of all, that company will follow this software development lifecycle. So first they will gather all the information that is provided by you. Okay, after once you provide all the inputs, based upon your inputs, they will decide. Okay, they will do some analysis. Okay, in order to achieve these requirements, what are all the actions that we need to take. Okay, so they will do some POCs kind of stuff. They will do some implementation, a basic implementation they will try to do, and if everything goes fine, then they will go with a design part. Okay, here in this design part, they'll choose what are all the tools that we can use and from where we have to start and what are all the process that we can able to follow. Everything will be decided, and what type of language we have to use, either Java, .NET. So based upon the requirements, they'll choose which option, which language we can use. Okay, once the design is also done, then actual implementation will come into the picture. So in actual implementation, based upon the language we choose, that particular developers will come into the picture. Like for example, if I choose Java, so Java developers will come into the picture and they'll start writing Java code for the application. So once the coding is also done. Hello, uh, any questions? Fine. So once the implementation is also done, then we'll go with the testing part. Okay, so here they'll do various types of testing that are available, like functional testing, regression testing, manual testing, and performance of your application testing. Everything they will do it, and then they'll go with an evaluation. So evaluation is nothing but, so they will deploy it into various environments, and finally they will deploy it into a production server, and the production server will be monitored and managed by an operation team. So this is what the entire process that we use, every software company used to follow for in order to develop an application. Okay, but there will be a slightly different with the way they follow these applications. So I'm going to explain about those part. So let's have a waterfall method. So in this waterfall method, so as you see on the right side, so you see some stages. Okay, so whatever the stages we discussed till now, the same stages are listed in this manner. Okay, here for example, on the left side you see a computer, I mean a phone mobile application. So I'm a client, I'm expecting some mobile application which is having some buttons. So you can see on the screen here, so I have some buttons. So each button will have some functionalities. For example, if I click on this button, So it has to execute some task, and if I click on to this button, so some task will be executed. So like that, each and every button will have its own functionality. So what I have to do is I need to develop an applications in which whenever a user clicks on a button, it has to execute that functionality. So this is what my requirement. So if you want to achieve this, if you're going with waterfall method, what we can do is we'll gather all the requirements. So requirements will be like, for example, if I click on this button, so what action that I have to take. Okay, if I click on this button, so what action it has to take. So these are nothing but the requirements. Okay, so I have told that, okay, if I click on this button, so this application, some files needs to be saved. If I click on this button, so it has to redirect to some other page, something. So these are the requirements. So I have given those requirements, and then they'll go with analysis, design, coding part, and testing, and so on. Okay, so this entire process will be done with using a waterfall method. So that is possible, but using this waterfall method, we have some drawbacks. Like, for example, if you're specifically going with waterfall method, so what are all the buttons that you are able to see here? All these buttons needs to be implemented at a time. Like, for example, I have to gather the requirements for all these buttons, and then I have to analyze for all, I mean, I have to do some analysis on all these buttons together. And the same way, design and the coding part is also will be the same. Like, all the developers needs to write functionalities for all the buttons. Okay, so because of this, so we have some drawbacks, like the duration of time is lengthy, because here every process is going on sequential order. So after completion of one task, then only it's going with the next task, and after completion of design, then only it goes with the coding part. After completion of coding only, it's go with testing. So every process is going in a sequential order. So that's the reason the time usually take for waterfall method is very high when compared with other methods. Okay, so that is one major drawback. And 100% utilization of a resource is not possible here. That means, for example, currently we are in coding stage. Okay, currently I'm the developer. I'm just developing some code, and the people or the resources who are who are working in testing team, or the resources who are working in design team, they won't have any other work to do, because design team, they're done with their work and they hand over to the coding developers. But testing team, they're looking for the work but not yet started. So here I'm not able to utilize the resources 100%, right? So that is one more drawback. And also, as I'm sending this entire application bulk code at a time, so it will be very difficult for me to identify if there are any bugs. Okay, so that will be very difficult for me to identify it. So that is one more drawback. Okay, so in order to overcome all these three drawbacks, major drawbacks, these, so we do have few other drawbacks, but these three drawbacks will be considered as a major drawbacks. Okay, so in order to overcome this kind of drawbacks, so all the software companies in 2008 around, so they started using a new methodology called agile. So in agile, the same example you can consider like a mobile application. So what are all the buttons you are going to see? So those buttons you will segregate into parts. Like, segregate into parts in the sense, for example, I need one button which I supposed to develop as a priority. Okay, and next, second priority buttons, and so on. So like that, I will segregate into parts. So in the first part, I'll only think about that particular button. I don't bother about remaining buttons. I just only think about the only single button, and I will develop the code, everything, functionalities, everything with respect to that button only. Okay, so like that, here we'll segregate into everything into parts. Okay, so so this part we call it as sprint, and the duration of sprint will be decided by the management. In some projects the duration will be 2 weeks, in some projects duration will be 3 weeks. That depends upon the management. So So the duration will be decided by the management, and that entire duration we call it as sprint. Okay, so in the first sprint, what they are going to do, they'll gather the information and do some analysis, and then they'll design only for that button. Okay, they won't go with the remaining buttons. They will design only that particular part, and then developers will develop that application functionality of that particular button, and then testing and so on. So we can overcome the drawbacks what we have with waterfall method. I'll explain how. So for example, let us consider currently we are in testing phase of sprint 1. So let us consider sprint 1, sprint 2 and sprint 3, three different sprints. Okay, so currently we are in testing phase of sprint 1. So meanwhile, developers done with their work with respect to sprint 1. So I can ask them to start working on sprint 2, right? So I can make developers to work parallelly. Okay, so if you are going with this kind of situations, so your application will be developed within the less time what we used to take for waterfall method. Okay, so initially, for example, if waterfall method is to take 6 months, so using agile methodology we can reduce it to 3 months. Okay, so 100% utilization of a resource is possible here. The reason is once they're done with their first part, they can start working on the second sprint immediately, because meanwhile these two teams will start working on the remaining sprint 2 part. So here I can take
Hi,
100%.
Surya.
Yeah, yeah, Vamsi.
Yeah, sorry for the interruption. I have one doubt here.
Yeah.
As you said, that there are some kind of buttons in some application, right? So,
Yes.
let's say that that application having two buttons, for example, one is restore and one is save button. Okay.
Okay.
So once
Yeah.
the user is filling the data and he
Yes.
clicked on the save button in the sprint one, so it's saved in the database. But in the parallelly, how can the developers will work on the restore button even if it is not finished in the database?
Yes.
Because once
If
it's
that is
stored in
the
the
case,
database only, they can work in restore button. No?
yes, yes, yes. If that is the case, they'll include two buttons in one sprint. If such kind of dependencies are there, so they will include two buttons. So it's not meant you have to fix only with one button. Just for an example, I have told only one button, but in some cases you may also have 3 4 buttons that you are going to develop in one particular sprint.
Yeah, the correct. But my scenario is, I'm saying for example only. See these two buttons, if you can include in one sprint only, but in the second sprint, how can they immediately work on the second sprint? I didn't get the point exactly.
No, actually there is some options uh, release. So in version control tools or some other applications we are going to use, so in that we'll have some branch strategies. So in branches, after once we done with their work, so we'll merge those branches and then we'll get the actual output code. Like for example, if I have only one piece of code and if I run that, build that application, what happens, I'll get only application with respect to that particular buttons, right? I can able to see only those two buttons that will be visible on my application, and later they will also include the remaining buttons. Okay, so in sprint 2 they'll also add remaining buttons to the same code itself. Okay, so here in Java or any other language, what you can do is you can have a separate Java files for each and every functionality. Like in first sprint, they will develop only two buttons functionalities, and in the second sprint they will also develop two more functionalities and they will add it to the same code. Okay, so once they build it again, now they will get an application which consists of 4 buttons, and then they will go with sprint 3. So in sprint 3 they will again add two more buttons and they will build it again. So now the application will have that application war file or jar file, a binary file will have all the 6 buttons together. Okay, and internally mapping can also be done with the coding level itself. So this is how the application will be developed.
Like Surya, if suppose they developed e-commerce application, suppose, see there are
Okay.
some APIs, order API, product API. If
Okay.
suppose if the user is actually clicked on this product API, first of all they will include all the products in that particular API,
No,
no? Then only they
no, no,
can
no.
able to.
Actually, here, I'm not saying that it will directly go to the user end. Okay, initially every application will be developed in these kind of phases. Once everything is ready and it's open to customer, then only they will hand over it to the customer, and then only they will they deploy it into the production servers. But initially they will
For
they will
testing
develop an
purpose.
application. Sorry.
For testing purpose, they will test no if the products are actually is able to viewing by all the people or not, like
Yes,
that. They will test.
actually, initially, what they will do is they will only do very basic level of testing, like only the functionality of that particular button. Only in that way they will do. But once they go with an evaluation, in evaluation we do also have different environments. Like initially they will deploy it into development box, and later they will go with a testing box. Here, testing box in the sense they will only check with the functionalities. Okay, they won't go with full
Okay, okay.
length testing. Okay, once this application reaches to UAT, okay, user acceptance testing, so in that
Mhm.
situation they will add the remaining kind of testing, like they will just try to behave like a user and they will test it from that user end. So first of all, application
Okay.
has to reach to that level, then only they'll go with the UAT testing. So in UAT testing we'll do have all the everything should be ready before we go with UAT.
Okay, okay. Actually, I was confused with
Yeah,
how they parallelly they worked on the services like that.
yes,
Okay.
this method is used to develop an application in very initial level. So once everything
Okay.
is ready and everything is if everything is ready for the user end, then they will go with the UAT testing, and then they will deploy it into the production server. And then after also they will also follow the same method in order to add some extra features for an existing application, so like updates. So application updates will also be followed with the same method. Okay.
So,
Okay,
hi,
okay.
Surya. Just I wanted to, can I add one point to
Yeah,
one point here?
yeah, you can.
Yeah, yeah. See, in waterfall model, the client will not be able to see the product till the end, till the deployment
Yes,
time.
yes,
But in Agile or in
yes,
the Scrum Master, okay, we can show the intermediate deliverables which are called sprints to the customer. So the customer can see the product in the intermediate stages, and he can give a feedback. He or she can give a feedback so that
yes,
those flexibility is there in Agile or Scrum, so that
yes,
actually those changes can be incorporated. There is
yes,
a
yes,
flexibility here.
yes,
And
yes,
most of the tasks that are fitted into the sprint, which are not interdependent, those are not dependent tasks. The
yes,
interdependent tasks, for example, if you are developing a banking application, suppose if you want to develop a domestic net banking and if you want to develop a overseas banking, these two are a different set. So that can be split into the two different sprints.
yes. I agree
Just
that.
I wanted to
Yeah,
add that point.
yes, yeah. Thank you, Prakash. Thank you. So
Okay. Thank you, Prakash. Now I got it.
yeah,
Okay.
okay. So the reason why I explained about this agile and waterfall method is DevOps will follows agile. So DevOps is based upon agile. So that's the reason. So in interview point of view also they might ask you some questions related to agile, and so that's the reason I just given you the overview of agile methodologies and all. Now let's go to the actual. Okay, here I just listed some differences. So just now we have discussed, no, the same differences I listed here. So now let's go with the DevOps.
Hi Surya, this is Navya here.
Yeah, hi Navya.
Actually, they will follow sprint in DevOps.
Sorry.
They will follow sprint.
Yes, obviously.
Okay. How many days actually? Like in Agile methodology, we can follow like by 15 days like that, right?
That depends. I mean, that varies from project actually. So basic, the standard duration will be 15 days, but in some
Okay.
projects they may also increase to 30 days. In some projects they may also decrease to 12 days. That depends upon project actually. They can decide.
Yeah. Okay, sorry.
So
Thanks.
all the sprint planning, Scrum calls, everything will be there in DevOps as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, fine. So any other questions before we go with DevOps? If you have any questions, you can ask me right now.
Surya, if you don't mind, could you please able to explain about how the flow of DevOps, like how the testing will do, like
Yes,
user
yes,
acceptance test and
yes.
smoke
I'll
test.
explain. Yeah.
Yeah,
Now I'm going to. I have to explain here. So before I
yeah,
explain about the different teams we have, okay. First, let me explain what exactly the organizations follows. Okay. So first, the major important teams in any organization, like any software company, is developers and operations. So developers are the person who generally writes their application code in a textured format, and they will build it application. So that comes under development team. And operations teams are nothing but who manages your production servers or various servers. Okay. So I'll explain how the application starts from developer and reaches till the production. So I'll explain the process, what exactly they used to take. So initially, once the developer come into the picture, they'll start writing an application code. Once they've done the application, so they'll go with build. So the reason why build is required is developer will write their code in a textured format. But if you observe, have you ever tried to install some application on Windows laptop or desktop? So you won't get any code, right? You'll get a binary formatted file. Okay. So if you want to run any application, you should have a binary format. Okay. So, but developer has written in a code format. So that code needs to be converted into a binary format in order to run your application. So in order to do this process, so we have to compile this code. Okay, we have to run this code, then only you will get the binary outputted file. So that process we call it as build. Okay, so once the build is done, initially developers will deploy that application in their lower environments. So lower environments will be like a developing box or a testing environment. These two environments, basically they will call it as lower environments. Okay, so lower environments will, in the sense, everything will be control of their own teams. Like a development box will be controlled with by a developer itself, and the testing box will be controlled by testing server itself, testers only. Okay, so initially they'll just they'll just place that file in the executable binary file in the development box, and they'll test that application. Okay, very basic level, like are they able to see that button at all, first of all. Okay, I'm able to see that button or not. Okay, that's very basic level of testing they will do. And then once developer feels that okay, that function, the button is working, I can able to see that button, I can also click able to click on that button, then they will hand over to the testing team. So now testing team will deploy the same file in their testing environment. Okay, now testing team will do some more testing, okay, on that particular application, like on that particular button. So once the testing is also done, then they will go with a higher environments. So in higher environments, we do also involve some, in some projects the servers will be something like JIT, SIT, some other names they will follow. So and here, first of all, every application will have three different layers. Okay, so first layer will be like front end. So whatever the application that you are able to see on your mobile phone or a computer screen, so that will comes under front end. Okay, so once I click on any button, so in the back end, for every each and every button there will be some logic written. Okay, so once I click on any particular button, so backend process will be starting. So there will be one application that is going to run on your backend, right? And once the backend, once I click on this button, this backend process will be initiated. And for example, if I try to log into an application, okay, I'll just click enter my details like my username and password, and then I click on login. So once I click on login, so login backend process will be initiated. But how my username and password will be validated? So my username and password needs to store in some location, some data location where I can able to get, and based upon that it will compare and it will validate my username and password. So there will be a database. So data layer, we call it as data layer. So that database layer will be in the background, and which will hold all the user information like username, passwords, and other information, that whatever the information that you provide. So they will maintain a database where it holds all the information. So we do have three different layers. So initially with the developers and testing, so they will only check with respect to that application, like only front end screen they will check. Or if they are going with back end logics, they will only check with those logics. That's it. But coming to UAT, okay, user acceptance testing. So in UAT, what they will do, they will include all these three layers together. Okay, so they will include all these three layers like front end, back end logics, as well as data layer. So all these three layers they will include together, and they will do testing. Okay, so once I click on login, they'll check whether I'm able to log in or not. Okay, so all this kind of testing will be done. So that includes functional testing, regression testing, performance of your application also will be tested. Okay, once the UAT testing is also done, then they will go with ORT. Okay, so in ORT is nothing but pre-prod, we can call it as pre-prod. So here whatever the configurations that we have, like server configurations, like for example, if your production server is running on 64 GB RAM and some 2-core memory or something. So if you have your production server with that configuration, the same type of configuration will be maintained for ORT servers also. Okay, so initially they will deploy that application on ORT server, and then they will monitor that application for 24 hours. Okay, they will monitor that application for 24 hours. The reason is, if once we deploy that application on ORT server, maybe that application will have may take more load and something goes wrong with the application, and some other predictions they'll do, like they will check the load statistics of that particular server 24/7. So if that load is stable, then only they will deploy it into the production server. Okay, so these are the steps that they used to follow in all the organizations. Now it's clear with the process. Just give me a quick confirmation.
Yeah, Surya.
So here previously, if we don't let's assume that there is no DevOps concept at all. So what they used to do is, once the developer done with his work, so they used to follow each and every process manually. Okay, each and every process some other teams used to involve, and they used to deploy it in various environments, and they used to do some testing and all. So this entire process used to take a manual process. So once the developer done with his work today, so that reaches to the production server maybe after 2 weeks. So this is a huge time period in which all the manual process used to be done, because this in order to complete this entire process, it is taking minimum 2 weeks of time. So the first requirement of any organization is they have to deploy any applications as soon as possible, so that they can increase the business. So that's the first goal of any client. So in order to reduce this gap or a time period, so we brought a DevOps into the picture. So here using DevOps, so we are collaborating a development team as well as the operation teams together in order to achieve your agenda. So our agenda is to develop an application and deploy it into the production server. So this is my target. So in order to achieve this agenda, so I'm collaborating a development team as well as an operation team together to work on a single process, and that too in an automated way. Okay, no more manual interaction here. So we reduced almost all the manual process and we made everything into an automated way. So now after DevOps, so whatever the time period that we used to take with a manual process got reduced to 2 days. Okay, in some cases it got reduced to 1 or 2 hours also. Okay, so that depends, that again depends upon the project process. Some projects will strictly consider some process to be done manually, some executions and approvals especially, so manager approvals needs to be required. So in that cases, that will be hold for manager approval until that completes, then only it will go with the next process. But in some projects they don't bother about that, immediately it will go out till the production server. Okay, that depends upon projects as well. But whatever the time period that used to take manually, so it got reduced once we started using DevOps. So again, in order to reduce this, we also involve multiple tools here, so that too in a automation way. Now it's clear, just an overview of DevOps. I'm going forward to explain more in detail, so just give me a quick confirmation. So that's the reason here, dev in the sense development, ops in the sense operations. Okay, so I'll go with the next slides. So using DevOps, these are the key benefits. So reduces and implementation time of new service from months to minutes. Okay, whatever the process that used to take manually, so that process got reduced to, from months, it used to take months, and now it's going to do it on minutes itself or hours. Okay, and also increases the productivity. Okay, and also it reduces the cost, and you can also you can also do faster delivery, like you can develop new things today and you can deliver it in by next day itself. So it just made everything in a faster manner. Okay, so these are the key benefits that uh, that comes with the DevOps particular. So as you can see the image here, it's almost related to agile methodologies. So these are the process that developers used to follow, like plan, code, build, test. So all this process will be under control of development, and then we'll go with release, deploy, maintenance and monitor. So all this process will be under control of operations. So here, once we collaborate these two teams together, what happens, whatever the work or whatever the process that is going on, everything will be transparent to all the teams. Like developer can able to know what's the status of your application, and operation guys can also be able to know what's the status of their application from the development end. Okay, so both the work will be in a transparent way, so that helps. So if there is some delays, so we can make some pressure on that particular team, and we can get the faster outputs. So that's the main thing. Okay, coming to this CI and CD flows. So first of all, I'll explain what is meant by integration. So before we go with CI and CD, so I'll explain what is meant by integration. So integration in the sense, once the code, I think already discussed earlier, right? Once the code is developed, that text formatted code needs to be converted into a binary formatted file. Then only I can able to run my application, right? So this text formatted file, how it is going to convert? So it has to go with build. Okay, so that build process we call it as integration. So here you see, so developers will do some plan execution, like how which button we have to take, or whatever the plan executions will be considered. And once the plan is ready, then they will go with code, and then they will do build, and then they will deploy it into a lower environment, and they will do some testing. So all this process we call it as integration. So if you do the same process in manual way, then we call it as integration. But the same thing if you automate, okay, so without any human interaction, if once, only the thing is coding part anyway developer has to do. But once after done, developer done with his work, and immediately that code needs to reach to the target server, like initial dev missions. Okay, so this entire process we call it as continuous integration. If some other, if we automate this process, then we call it as continuous integration. So that is meant by CI here. Okay, CI stands for continuous integration. And now coming to CD. So CD stands for continuous deployment. So first of all, I'll explain what is meant by deployment. So as we also discussed earlier, so what are all the different types of environments we have, like a test server, a UAT server, ORT server, production server. These are the different types of various environments what we have in the organization. So we have to deploy this application in various environments. So if someone is doing it in a manual way, then we call it as deployment. The same thing if we do it in an automated way, okay, without any human interaction, just click on, even in some cases we don't even require to click on any button. Okay, we just schedule that job so and so time, that's it. It will automatically deploy that application into that environment. Okay, so without any human interaction we can do this kind of stuff. So if that is automated, then we call it as continuous deployment. So is it clear with CA and CD? Just give me quick confirmation. If you have any questions, you can ask me now. So in the coming next slides, we are going to deal with various
So in the
yeah.
CI means like a plan, code, build, test. Does the which team will be working on this? I mean, like, is there any other team that they will do?
Developers and testing team, usually they used to work on integration.
So what will be the DevOps engineer guy, like he will be involved in when the development team is working on that? How we will be
Yes,
taking?
actually the main role of DevOps engineer will be like, so once the developer done with his coding part, so we'll hand over that work, like whatever the developer previously without DevOps, developer used to do that work, that manual work. So now what we are doing is we are taking under our hands and we are making that process into an automation way.
The build is really developer can do, or DevOps engineer responsibility?
Sorry?
The build process,
Yes.
is it done by
Actually,
the developer or DevOps engineer?
initially that will be under control of developer only, but
Then
later DevOps came into the picture, so we are going to take handover of that build part. So if anything goes wrong with the build, then we'll again revert back to developer and we'll just show them, okay, these are the errors that we are getting. If it is a code level errors, please rectify that immediately and we can go for a build. So this is only one time process, that we are not going to do it every regularly, like so we can automate the process in such a way that initially once the developer done with his work, and he will upload that code to some location. So once the location is updated with some code, immediately we'll have some jobs, or we'll write some process. So that process will be initiated immediately without any human interaction. So automatically that will be initiated. So that will take the updated code and it will build that their application. And once the updated code is done, it will also send an alert to the developer, so that developer will have an idea, okay, my build is done successfully. So it will just update the status of that build, either it is a successful or failed, so that if something failed, so developer immediately go through that code and he can check what exactly the error is.
Yeah, here in this diagram, it's a bit confusing now. So once the build is done, okay, it has to be deployed either test server or production server or something. But here, like after the build, again it's going to test. So how it is?
Here again in the test, in the sense they will deploy, because how they will test initially, like you have two types of testing actually. So you'll have a unit testing. So unit testing cases will also be under control of developers only. So developers.
So then the testing should come after the code. Okay, once the test is done, then okay, it should be built. Then it deploys to the.
No, it's not like that Actually, unit test cases will be like it's a part of your build itself. Like they will write some unit test cases. So unit test cases are nothing but very basic level of testing. So they'll write some unit test cases if they're using Java. So unit test cases will also be in Java language only. So once the compile
So,
is over, after compilation, these unit test cases will be executed, and it will check
yeah.
every classes. Like in Java, we do have something like classes. So it will check whether all the classes are generated correctly or not. So it's a very basic level of testing.
So
Okay.
then, okay, the diagram must be something like, okay, can be corrected in such a way, unit testing or something.
No. That
No?
comes at. I mean, I'm just explaining. We do have two different types of testings. So the first one is unit testing. So that can be done with the code
Yeah.
level also. In the part itself, that will be involved. And coming to the next part. So once the build is done, initially they will deploy it into development box or testing box, both. In some cases,
Mm-hmm.
both, or in some lower environments, like only in
Mm-hmm.
development. So then testing team will do some testing. Okay,
Yeah.
try to open that application
That's
GUI.
what, okay. So, but the diagram a bit confusing, that's right. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
here
Okay.
you can have both. Like if it is a part of build, then I don't want to mention that because it's all automatically is happening here. So we do require to do anything separately. So because the
Mm-hmm.
unit test cases will be automatically executed with respect to the build only.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay.
Any other questions?
So they will start the execution like parallelly. Developing and testing will go parallelly, right? In DevOps.
Develop, yes. Developing and
So for
testing not parallel exactly, but once the code is ready, then
okay,
only testing team can do the testing part, right?
okay. So there won't be a testing team, right? Developers has to do the test, right?
No. We also do have a testing team. Like for basic testing, no
Depends
need of
on
any
project.
specific test. Yes, basic testing we don't require any tester, but high level testing like
Okay,
the people who usually do it in UAT. So there some high
okay,
level testers will be coming to.
okay, fine.
Initial testing developer itself can able to do.
Okay.
Why for UAT you need some means high level testing? Means why is it considered that you will be coming? Some testers will be coming into picture. Same thing
No,
you can
actually,
also.
yeah, we can also do. I mean, in that most of the cases, not in all the projects. So in some projects they'll involve testers from UAT level. I mean higher environment, but initial level developers or any lead like developers will have some lead, right? So managers they itself they can able to verify it, like the application they're able to see or not.
Here, please
Okay.
don't mind, but I was asked to do the testing in UAT environment just because my development team was not having access to the UAT environment. Is
Yes.
it?
They don't
Yeah,
have, yeah, they won't have any access.
yeah.
Higher
So just like
environments, no one is is going to have, only operation guys and the testing people. Only these two teams will have that access.
okay.
Okay. Operation guys required because they have to deploy it into that deploy this application into that server. So for that reason operation guy will have that access, and testing guy requires to test that application. So only these two teams will have that access. Okay, any other questions? Okay, and then I'll go with some tools. So first I'll explain. I think we are getting late today, so I'll do one thing. I'll just explain bit speed. If you have any questions, you can ask me. Not an issue for me. Okay. So first I'll explain about version control tools here. So
Like
yeah,
in the Jenkins, we do some coding. So there we used a Groovy scripting. So
yes,
are
yes,
we, yeah, are we covering this also?
yes. I'm going to explain all the topics that. So maybe next slide you can see here. I'm going to discuss about those tools.
I see the AWS is also included. Is it
Yes, yes.
partially? Are you going to explain in this curriculum or in a
Yeah,
core
I
level?
mean, yeah. Let me continue with this. So anyway, I'll be explaining. So when that slide comes, okay, I'll just go ahead with the slides. Okay, I'll explain that part. So coming to this version control tool. So the main uses of this version control tool is to store your code. Okay, for example, if you consider a real-time scenario, so not a single developer will develop an application, right? So multiple developers will involve in developing that entire application. So if let us consider three different developers are working on an application on three different parts of your application. So all the developers, what they are doing, so they are storing their application code in their own laptops. Okay, so one of the developer is on leave, and even he's not able to, I mean, we are trying to reach him, but we are not able to reach him. So now the entire code is in his own laptop. What happens? I have to send this application now. I just need to show this application output to the client immediately. So what happens? It will be some escalation for sure. So the same case, if I ask all the developers to store their code in a shared location, where once the developer is done with his work, you just upload your code to this shared location. Even though in the absence of developer, I can get the application code from that location. So that's the main uses of this version control tool. And there is also an extra feature that we have with version control tool is version control tools will track each and every changes. Like for example, today I make some change in so and so file in so and so line. So after 1 year also I can able to check what change I made on this particular day. It will just store the older change as well as the new change also. Okay, like what was the word that you replaced, both the words it will be storing. So it will just store everything as an history. Okay, so that's the main advantage of using a version control tool. Okay, so in our session we are going to deal with Git concepts. So I'm going to explain how Git is going to work and what are all the commands that we are regularly using Git. Okay, so coming to the next slide, if you are using Git, so in order to see your code in a GUI based, you have to integrate Git with any of these web based Git repositories. So there are separate tools that are available. So you can integrate Git with any of these tools. So GitLab, GitHub, Bitbucket, whatever the tool you want. So I'm just dealing with GitHub because GitHub can be hosted on cloud. Actually, GitHub is hosted on cloud. We don't require to install it anywhere. So you just need to create an account in GitHub and you can start using Git. But whereas GitLab and Bitbucket, so Bitbucket and GitLab needs to install it some on-premises server if you want to access it. But recently GitLab is also started providing access for the cloud. Like you can also create an account in GitLab and you can make use of it, but it's a purely paid version. Okay, whereas GitHub is having both paid version as well as the free version. So we are going to use everything in a free version only. Okay, now coming to the next slide about AWS. So we are going to deal 6 to 7 services in AWS, like EC2 instance, how to create S3 bucket, Route 53, RDS servers, and ELB, and Elastic Block Storage. So all these kind of services that we regularly use in DevOps point of view. So AWS is a very big ocean, huge ocean, which have all the services. Like it's not only meant for DevOps, it's all expanded in such a way that it's already providing services to each and every technology what we have in the market. Almost all the technologies it's going to provide the service. So but we are not going to deal everything here. So we are only going to deal the services which are useful for up to our extent, like up to DevOps point of view, what are all the services that are required. So only those services we are going to deal. Okay, I think now I cleared your question, right?
Yeah.
Guys, I do request
So
one thing. So Yeah, just a small announcement, guys. Please drop your mail IDs and phone number in the chat one by one. You just okay. Yeah, you go ahead. Go ahead. You're asking some question.
Yeah. Regarding the AWS, as in the market we have AWS as well as Azure, right? So in that
Yes.
case, we are with the AWS, and like you said, like we will be going whatever we require for the DevOps. I don't know what we require mostly for the DevOps, because cloud computing, it's a very long and vast topic. So
Yes.
in that
Yes.
case, how we are to cover the DevOps part in
No,
AWS?
actually, if whatever the tools that we are going to discuss going forward, so all those tools needs to install on some environment, like right. So those environments, we are everything we are going to take it from cloud, like AWS account itself. So in AWS we do launch EC2 instance, and if you want to have a EKS like Kubernetes, if you want to deal with Kubernetes, we have a service called EKS. So I'm going to show you how EKS can be launched.
So we all are, I mean, we will be working on all
Yes,
AWS account only,
AWS. Yes.
complete DevOps,
AWS.
or annually we will
Yes.
be working on separate servers and all.
No, fully on AWS. So we are going to take all the servers from AWS.
So initially only in day one we will be creating the account in AWS and we will be
Yes, yes,
working on that
yes. We'll start everything
for
from
all.
AWS. So initially we'll have a
So,
Git setup, and once we're done with Git, because Git is not dependent, so you can install Git on your Windows machine itself, like your laptop itself. And then
okay,
we'll first deal with the Git topics, and then we'll go with AWS topic. So I'll also show you how to how to create an AWS account and all. I'll guide you with that.
sure. Okay, sounds good.
And then we'll go with integration tools. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So how should I have a requirement of Azure. So how should I deal with all these DevOps tools on Azure?
Azure again, the total environment will be changed. Like so in Azure also, in Azure Cloud also, we do also have an option like Linux environments. We can in Azure Cloud, you can launch Linux instances. If you take a Linux instance, then the process will be same. The installation process on both Azure Cloud or AWS, both will be same. But how to launch an instance will be slightly different. Like in AWS, the launch process will be different. I mean, you'll have an account of AWS. There you can see different options, services, and you have to click on that service, and then you'll redirect to that option, then click on launch service something. So that will be the process with respect to AWS. But if Azure, the total option will be different. But in internally, tools in installation, everything will be same. Now you got it.
Yeah, but still that configuration would be different,
Like,
right?
see here, we are going to take infrastructure. Okay, infrastructure in the sense servers. So you can have the same infrastructure from any of your cloud. Like Google is also providing infrastructure, AWS is also providing infrastructure. At the same time, um, Cloud is also providing infrastructure. So we are just taking the infrastructure, and then we are going to install these applications or these tools on those infrastructure.
Yeah, just
Okay.
to install all these softwares on their
Yes. I can
particular.
also show it. I can also show this installation on my Windows laptop itself, but that will be very difficult for you once you step into any project. So almost all the cases, almost all the projects, they are dealing with Linux environments. So
Yeah.
in that case, you'll face some issues. So I forgot to mention one more thing. So I'm going to deal Linux concepts also. I'm going to take a separate sessions for Linux as well. So that also will be covered as per the course session.
Okay, in the
Okay.
AWS, you are using a plugin also, which are means AWS supported plugin.
No. What is mean by plugin? I didn't get
Plugin
you.
means plugin means AWS might be supporting giving a support for ops and dev. his own tools instead of this
No,
free
I mean, yeah,
DevOps?
actually, AWS is also having a services that without these tools also we can launch, but we are not going in that way. So we are directly taking only the infrastructures from AWS, and we are going to install these applications manually.
Okay.
In AWS, we do also have a service called AWS Code, where you can store your code as well. Okay, the same thing what Git is going to do, the same thing we can also do it with AWS, but we are not going to deal with that.
Okay,
Okay,
but
yeah.
still, if I go with your course, how I will be getting a support for Azure then? If I get something,
Azure, I'm not going to deal anything like only the infrastructure. If you are able to take infrastructure, if you are capable to take infrastructure from Azure account, then after once you log into the server, the process what that I'm going to do, everything will be same. That's what I'm telling. But
okay,
before launching the infrastructure will be different. So that you have to take care of that
Yeah.
because we are only dealing with AWS.
Surya,
I
will
had
you
a
be
quick
having a
question.
project to deploy?
Sorry.
Do you have a project, end project,
Yes.
where we use all
Yes.
the
Yes.
tools?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We have a project.
I had a question in regards to it. My only question is, what language will we be focused on in regards to Python, Java, or
No, it involves
anything?
multiple languages actually. Here, initially we'll start with Shell, and later
Okay,
we'll deal with Groovy, and then you will also deal with YAML scripts.
gotcha. So we won't be touching basing anything in regards to Python or Java.
We'll be involving in multiple. When we also do some JSON formats, also will be
Oh,
used.
gotcha. Okay. All right. Thank you. That was my only
It's not
question.
fixed. The entire course is not fixed to one particular language. So based upon the tool, languages will be different. Like Ansible will use this YAML format. So in that case, we'll deal with YAML. Okay.
Okay. You keep mentioning in regards to the project. So if I pick your project or if I take your project for what it's worth, exactly how would I be choosing the project that I want to do, or is it just everything will
Yes,
be
it's
covered in the
almost
project?
related. Yes, it's almost related to the real-time project. Like,
Okay.
yeah, we do have a Java project which will have some GUI, everything, and it's almost similar to that real-time environment. So I'm going to explain. We do also take a database in the backend and how to run a database and how to attach the database and all that I'm going to deal.
Okay. So is this, again, my question still remains to be, is this going to be like one big project, or is this different projects that we're going to be doing or working together in it?
Actually, I have one more project. If you want, I can also explain that. But the thing is that is very small project. So
Okay.
if you want initially, I'll start with that project, and later I'll go with the visual project, a visual path project, what we have.
And so
So I'll
how
explain
long
both
is
if you want.
gotcha, how long is this project will be? An
No,
estimated time, like,
here project if developers needs to write some code, then it will take some time. But if the code is already ready, it won't take
correct.
some, I mean, it won't take any other extra time. Like we just take the code, we build it and deploy it into various environment. We deploy into the environment. Here we don't have various environments, so we'll directly deploy it into one server.
Okay.
So maybe 3 hours
Well,
we can cover the project.
I have one more question. I am not into the coding till date, so
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to get into the DevOps. So without coding, how I can get in and how I can survive? Do I
So
need to learn any Python or any Ruby? Is it mandate that like I have to learn complete core level of that scripting?
no, actually here, if here we don't require coding knowledge. Actually, coding will be purely based upon developers only. But we do require some scripting knowledge. It can be any one specific scripting language. If you are perfect, then it will be fine. But if you want to
So
do something more like
how one in every different environment will be having different scripting they will be using, I believe, right?
yeah, but here most of the tasks that what we are going to do, everything will be done with YAML script, or Ansible will also be working on YAML, and Docker will also be working on YAML, and even Kubernetes is also going to work on YAML script. So if you are perfect with YAML, that will be fine for you. Anyway, I'm going to deal how the YAML script needs to be written, and then also Groovy script. So in Jenkins, we do also have some options where you can generate your own Groovy script by just providing the inputs. You can generate your own Groovy script. So that options are available with these tools.
Okay. So which script you're teaching in this course then? Any specific
I'll just start with
Ruby,
shell command.
Python, like that?
No. I'm not going to deal with the Ruby and Python. So I'll just start with Groovy, shell scripting. I'll just cover shell scripting part as well, and then we'll go with YAML scripts. Okay, and JSON also.
Okay.
So everything from basics we are going to start. So don't worry if you still don't know any particular script also. No, not an issue here. So we are going to deal everything from basic.
All right.
Okay. So coming to these integration tools, so these integration tools are very important tools in DevOps point of view. Like whatever the process that we discussed till now, like continuous integration, continuous deployment process. So that entire process can be automated only based upon these integration tools. So here I have just listed only 4 integration tools. So, but there are few other products that are available in the market, but these 4 are the very widely used integration tools. So the first one is Jenkins. So Jenkins is purely open source tool where you can you can install on any platform. So with respect to any platform, you can install this Jenkins application and you can make use of it. And the second tool is Bamboo. So it's a highly paid integration tool. So, and continuous delivery, TeamCity, even these 2 tools are also paid versions. So in this session, we are going to deal with Jenkins. So in Jenkins, I'm going to cover the topics like master and slave configurations, how to create users and roles and responsibilities, how to install plugins, how to manage your Jenkins application, how to write a CI pipeline normal way, as well as a pipeline view. I mean, writing that script in Groovy script using a Groovy script. So all these topics we are going to deal. Okay. And coming to the next tool called compilation tool. I think I already told you about the tool. So compilation tool is nothing but a build tool. Like whatever the code written by the developer, that code needs to convert into a executable binary formatted file. So in order to convert this, so we do require some compilation. So that compilation can be can be handled by these tools here. So based upon the language, the tool will also be differ. Like most of the cases, if it is Java language, either you can go with Ant or Maven. If it is C language, you can go with CMake. If it is .NET, we have some tools like MS Build or something. Okay, so based upon the tool, you can go ahead. Based upon language, you can choose the tool, whatever the tool that you want. And then we'll go with artifact storage repository. So after the compilation is done, so I'll have my binary formatted file, right? So this binary formatted file, in order to, that same file needs to deploy it into various environments, right? So if I place it on the same server where this build is happened, so maybe someone can rebuild that same application by doing some modification, minor modifications or whatever. So what happens? The previous application file will be overwritten on an existing file. So I don't want to such kind of things. So instead of that, I need a separate place where I can store all the binary files. So that separate place, we call it as artifact storage file. So that binary output which we got after once we done with the compilation, so that binary output file, we call it as artifact. Okay, in terms of software terminology, so we call it as artifact. So that in order to store that artifacts, we need a separate tool where it only stores all the artifacts. Like here I have just listed 2 tools. So one is Nexus and the other one is Artifactory. So we are going to deal with Nexus here. And then configuration management tools. So configuration management tools are nothing but For example, I supposed to do some modification. So this purely comes from the operation side. So configuration management tool will be purely comes under operation side generally. So for example, if they gave me a new server and asked me to install some applications on that server, so what I will do, I'll just log into that server manually and then I will install those applications. Fine. So once the very next day, what happened, they gave me 10 more servers and asked me to do the same process on all the 10 servers. So in this kind of scenario, what happens, I have to log into each and every server manually and I have to execute the same repetitive process on all the 10 servers. So here I'm spending a lot of time and lot of effort as well, right? In order to reduce this kind of situation, in order to handle this kind of situations, we have a tool called configuration management tool. So in this case, we'll go with Ansible. So in Ansible, we'll write some playbooks, which is in a YAML format. And once you run that YAML and we'll trigger that YAML, automatically this YAML will be connected to all the 10 servers and it will execute the same repetitive task on all the 10 servers, that too very less time. Okay, in the parallel way. So that's the advantage of if it is 10 servers, then it will fine. What about if suppose if you have 100 servers, the same execution has to do it on 100 servers. So in that case, so we can able to reduce lot of efforts, right? So for that we use this configuration management tools. Not only for that, we also use this configuration management tools for purely on deployment purpose. Like if I want to deploy my application in various environments, so I can do it using this configuration management tools. Okay, fine. And coming to this orchestration tools, so orchestration tools are nothing but so first of all, I'll just explain what is meant by Docker first, then I will go with orchestration tool. So so Docker is nothing but, for example, if I have an application, okay, I have one application, I want to run it on my Windows laptop, but that application is compatible only on Linux machine. So that application will only support Linux server, but still I want to use it on my Windows machine. So what I can do, I can install a VMware or VirtualBox, and on top of that I can install Linux software, and then on top of that I can install application. Right, so here VMware will act as a hypervisor which will share your computer resources with Linux as well. So this entire process we call it as virtualization. But the same process, if you want to make this entire process stable, so you have to spend a lot of time, like installing VMware and installing Linux OS on that and installing application. All the things will take some time here, but you can also reduce the time by using a Docker. So Docker is a containerization application. Like your application can be converted into an image format where that image will support with its own with its own server. Okay, so that inside that image itself, it will have its own server. It's not going to use any of your server resources. So it will have its own server. So immediately within minutes you can launch a container, and within minutes you can make use of it. Okay, so that's the main advantage of using Docker. Okay, so now coming to orchestration. So if you have 5 to 10 containers, you can do it on one standalone machine. Like I can take one Linux server or one Windows machine, I can launch it on that server itself. But for example, if you have 100 containers that you want to run, like 100 applications you want to handle, right? So in that kind of scenarios, what you can do, you'll you will have multi-server architecture, that we call it as clustering. Okay, so I'll take 5 to 6 Linux missions and I'll create a cluster. So you know what is meant by cluster, right? So clustering in the sense grouping of servers. So I'll just create a cluster by adding all these servers together, and I launch these containers and I will share within these 6 servers. Like 100 containers will be running on all the 6 servers. Okay, So that's the main advantage. There is one more advantage using this orchestration tool is high availability. For example, if something goes wrong with one server and if server is down, but still the containers will be available, because once the server is down, whatever the containers that are running on that particular server will automatically shift it to the next available servers. Okay, so that's the main advantage of using orchestration tools here. So we do have two different orchestration tools, that is Docker and Kubernetes. So I'm going to deal with both. I'm going to explain Docker Swarm as well as Kubernetes concepts as well. Okay.
In Kubernetes, will you be doing the Helm charts and Prometheus and Grafana also?
No. We are going to deal with the deployment services and RC controllers, replication controllers.
Just pod and deployments, but like
Yes, pod.
you will not be dealing with the Prometheus and Grafana.
No. Prometheus is a different tool actually. Prometheus is a tool which monitors your containers, like how the
Exactly.
containers, yes, how the containers is working, like whether the containers are in healthy state or not. It's a different tool. You can integrate Prometheus with Docker as well. It's not
Yeah,
stick to
I
Kubernetes,
mean the
but we are
Kubernetes
not going to
runs the
deal.
Docker containers,
Yes.
but Grafana, Dashboard, Elk Stack, you will not be covering, is it?
No. I'm not going to cover that.
Okay, all right.
And coming to the next tool called SonarQube. Yeah, do you have any questions? Hello. Yep. So coming to the next tool called SonarQube. So SonarQube is a tool which is used to know your code quality. Like once the developer writes the code, so every code will have some predefined syntaxes where you can check the syntaxes of each and every line of your code, so that whenever it also checks the weak points of your code. Like some hackers, if they try to access your application, so they'll try to find out some weak points of your application. So it will try to check with respect to the code level whether you have any weak points that provides access for the hackers. So it will check each and every line of your code, and based upon that it's going to give you the information, like how many code smells that we have, and how quality of your code is having. So all this information that we are going to take from this SonarQube. Okay, so that also we are going to deal. And then monitoring tools. So we know monitoring tools are the tools which are used to monitor your applications. Like not only applications, you can also monitor the server. For example, if your production server is down with some reasons, and you don't have any idea about that server, so you don't take any actions accordingly, right? So obviously that leads to a business loss. So some tool has to there in order to send you the information that if some server is down, it has to send some alert immediately. You can able to take the action on that. So for that reason we go with Nagios. We go with monitoring tools actually. So we are going to deal with Nagios. Okay, and the infrastructure as a code as Terraform. So in Terraform is also a tool which is used to maintain and manage your infrastructure and an application. So this process can be done using this Terraform. Like for example, Terraform will be used in cases like, for example, you're running one application and that application can handle 10 users. Let us consider, okay, that application can able to handle 10 users. For example, if the number of users are increasing, it's almost close to 10. What happens? We need an immediate new server on holding that application, and that needs to attach to a load balancer. So how if I go with a manual way, so it will take a long time to make, and I have to also need to do the configuration, and I need to install that application and all. So you can convert your entire infrastructure state into a code format. Like here we use JSON. So there is not specifically JSON, but it's almost related to JSON only. So we'll convert that infrastructure into code format. So once you run this file, the entire infrastructure will be ready within minutes. Okay, within 5 to 10 minutes, the entire infrastructure will be ready, and you can make use of it. So that's the main advantage what we have with the Terraform. Still, we can also deal the same situation from using Ansible also, but here the another advantage of using Terraform is, so Terraform will save all the state of your application. Like for example, if you do the same process with Ansible, if you run that playbook for one time, so it will launch one server. If you do it again, if you run the same playbook again, it will launch one more server. Okay, but whereas Terraform, if you run once, so you'll have the state information, so that everything will be I mean, what are all the information once the server is launched? We have information like IP address and everything, right? So that configuration details will be saved by Terraform itself. And if you rerun the file also, it's not going to create one more instance. Okay, so that state of your server will be maintained in Terraform. So that's the main advantage of using Terraform. Any questions? I'm done with my course content.